You don't need to be atheist Albert Einstein, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, or Richard Dawkins to refute quack and loony William Lane Craig. Religio-psychotic William Lane Craig is postulating that without this alleged God person, we would not have a basic understanding of morality and ethics. It required only one of the 7 of us, less than 10 minutes, to entirely cancel out William Lane Craig's absurd contention about this God person. He's saying without this alleged God, there wouldn't be any standard of morality.
The argument is that without God as a transcendent foundation for moral values, we're simply lost in socio-cultural relativism. Who are you to judge that the Nazi ethic was wrong? Who are you to judge that the ethic of ancient Hinduism was wrong? Who are you to judge that the Afrikaner apartheid is wrong? This is all just the result of socio-cultural evolution, and there is no transcendent objective standard apart from God, and that's what God delivers.
We won't even cover William Lane Craig's remarkably absurd and egotistic assertion that these morals must have been presented by way of the Christian Bible alone, and not any other religion. William Lane Craig wrongly claims
there is no transcendent objective standard apart from God, and that's what God delivers for us.
There is no transcendent objective standard apart from God. That's what God delivers for us. Really? Is this the same alleged God person who intelligently designed infant cancer? The age of peak cancer incidence among children occurs during the first year of life, and we all know that children are very evil and menacing at 0 months to 1 year in age. That's where they're the most dangerous. Of course, at less than a year old, God would want to strike these horrible, evil infants with a critical, incurable, horribly painful disease. That's very moral, and the standard of ethics, delivered to us by this God that William Craig alleges.
There is no transcendent objective standard apart from God, and that's what God delivers.
Malignancies of infancy represents 10% of all cancer that is diagnosed among children younger than 15 years of age. The average annual incidence rate of all infant cancer combined was 233 per million infants, which was 12% higher than the age 2 years, with the next highest incidence. This adds up to millions and millions of infants stricken with incurable cancer by this very moral God, who, according to William Craig, delivered us its morals. Neuroblastoma comprises 28% of infant cancer cases and was the most common malignancy among these young children, 65 per million infants. That adds up after time. They were very intelligently designed by this alleged God character that Craig alleges gave us his morals, murdering infants. Those are some fine morals. Wouldn't you agree? The leukemias as a group, 41 per million infants, represents the next most common type of cancer, comprising 17% of all cases. Central nervous system malignancies comprise 13% of infant cancer, with an average annual incidence rate of nearly 30 per million infants. This moral God designed for babies to die. That's some fine ethical standard there. Thank goodness William Craig was around to pass along its morals and values to us by way of his Christian evangelical doctrine.
That's what God delivers.
The average annual incident rates for malignant germ cell and malignant soft tissue tumors were essentially the same at 15 per million infants, each comprised about 6% of infant cancer, designed by this God apparently, or at least allegedly. Leukemias accounted for a substantial proportion of the racial difference, in that the average annual rate for white infants, 48.7 per million, was 66% higher than for black infants, 29.4 per million. God designed for whites to be stricken as infants with cancer more often than black infants. So this alleged God's design favored black-skinned people more so than whites. Of course, killing an infant is a very high standard of morality and ethical conduct. The prognosis for infants with cancer is often worse than in children of older ages, even when comparing the same histologic diagnosis. For instance, the 5-year relative survival for children younger than 15 years of age who were diagnosed with acute lymphoid leukemia from 1975 to 1994 was well over 70%, but for infants, the survival rate was 33%, meaning only 1 out of 3 survived. These are very fine designs by this alleged God character. Thank goodness we have Craig to identify these morals that were given to us by this creature that murders babies. These are the finest morals available, according to William Lane Craig, of course. Child cancer, continued unexplained weight loss, headaches, often with early morning vomiting, increased swelling or persistent pain in bones, joints, back, or legs, lump or mass, especially in the abdomen, neck, chest, pelvis, or armpits, development of excessive bruising, bleeding, or rash, constant infections, a whitish color behind the pupil, nausea, which persists, or vomiting without nausea, constant tiredness and noticeable paleness, eye or vision changes, which occur suddenly and persist, recurrent or persistent fevers of unknown origin. Yes, these infants were very intelligently designed, and the moral code is outstanding. Of course, we highly regard those who kill infants. Well, no, we don't. The Bible does, and William Lane Craig does.
There is no transcendent objective standard.
So when religio-psychotic William Lane Craig asserts we acquired our only morals from this alleged God person, Craig is really saying our morals and ethical values come from alleged God that murders infants, cruelly and painfully.
There is no transcendent objective standard apart from God, and that's what God delivers.
Craig has proven one of two things. 1, there is no alleged God. Or 2, this alleged God creature is a murderer by its own design. Albert Einstein said, "My position concerning God is that of an agnostic. I am convinced that a vivid consciousness of the primary importance of moral principles for the betterment and ennoblement of life does not need the idea of a lawgiver, especially a lawgiver who works on the basis of reward and punishment." We suspect he'd probably put in murdering infants in there as well, if he were aware of the infant cancer mortality rate and God's fine hand designing it. We suspect that Albert Einstein wouldn't be big on murdering infants either, and would probably find that irregular or out of context with high moral values.
Name one moral action that an unbeliever could not take. Well, that's trivially easy. If God exists, there are all kinds of moral duties that we have that the unbeliever could not recognize.
Yet the unbeliever recognizes that murdering infants is wrong, but William Lane Craig does not. Chances are that your child will not get cancer. The odds of your child developing cancer by the age of 19 is approximately 1 in 330. But cancer is second only to accidents as a cause of death in children.
The point is that on atheism, there are no moral obligations for anybody to fulfill.
If this alleged God person intelligently designed the death of millions of infants, it's a murderous criminal by atheistic moral codes. While evangelical Christians and God may approve of murdering infants, atheists do not. They're able to recognize that morality issue.
The point is that on atheism, there are no moral obligations for anybody to fulfill.